Welcome to the Legal Advice in Paradise podcast, brought to you by www.legaladviceinparadise.com. Even in one of the most beautiful places in the world, life can be litigious. On this podcast, the best and brightest legal minds gather to help you navigate your way through every legal question you may face. This program will help you know your rights, know what steps to take, and help you find the best legal representation, all in simple, easy to understand terms. And now, here's your host, Justine Gronwald.
Aloha, and thank you for tuning in to our next podcast episode. Want to make sure you never miss an episode, as well as get tips on how to hire an attorney and be eligible for monthly prizes? It's easy. Just join our free membership called the Agent of Change membership. Text your name and your email to area code 808-670-3400. Make sure you text back agree. And also, to check out our past episodes, just log into www.legaladviceinparadisepodcast.com. Now enjoy the next episode. Aloha. Hello, Agents of Change. This is Justine Gronwald with Legal Advice in Paradise. And today it's my extreme honor to have Elwin Ahu on the show today.
Hi, Justine. Thanks so much for this opportunity. It's a great chance to just talk about life.
Talk about you, and I get to know you and your role in the legal process, because let me just read from here so I don't miss anything. You were, in the early beginnings, a legal aid society attorney, managing attorney, also public deputy public defender in the private sector as an attorney, as well as district judge and in the First Circuit, and serving as civil lead judge. So before we dive into your illustrious career in law, what sparked your interest in getting into law?
Nothing really. People are surprised by that. My degree was actually elementary education, my undergrad degree. Played a lot of volleyball in college, collegiate volleyball, very competitive, which required us to take a lot of road trips. Mm-hmm. And so trying to find a major that I could, settle into, but it wouldn't be too hard because I'll be on the road a lot. And
but something convenient.
Yeah, and I loved kids, My mom was a substitute teacher for many, many years. And, I thought about teaching elementary age kids because they don't talk back to you at a younger age. And so got to the point where I was about to graduate. And the teaching jobs here at that time was very tight, very competitive, not very many openings. And a friend of mine called. I was going to school in Iowa at the time.
Oh, okay.
And a friend of mine from Hawaii called and said they're opening up the law school and they want to have more local kids apply. And would you be interested? Mm-hmm. And that's how I launched into a legal career by a phone call.
Can I share a little story?
Sure.
So I interviewed Duke Iona as well. So I asked him the same question, and it was almost the same answer.
Really?
It was his mother that encouraged him to keep going.
Oh.
And so, yours is not isolated, but we're all surprised that where it took you. So tell us what happened after that, after you got, told about the new law school here in Hawaii.
Yeah, so I didn't know how to apply, first of all, and I'm in Iowa. Found my way around to finally take it's called an LSAT, L-S-A-T. Mm-hmm. And took that test and got admitted to our law school and came home, and I had spent 4 years in Iowa. Oh. So I really wanted to be at home and do everything that I thought I could do before, fishing and going to the beach. And so I cut out of several classes at law school my first year. and I learned that you can't do that at law school. It's different than undergrad school.
Very intense.
Very intense. You have one major test, which is your score. There are no periodic tests throughout the semester. You have one, which is your final, and that's the only.
That's it.
That's your only grade.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so learned the ropes, so to speak, what's required of you, and did it okay. Made it through law school, and wanted to practice. Not quite sure where I was going to practice.
Yeah.
I had interned for a couple of summers at the Legal Aid Society.
Okay, is that the one in Molokai?
No, that was here in Honolulu.
Oh, okay.
And so got to really understand the heart of people who were suffering, people who had a hard time.
Yeah, this is catered. Explain more about Legal Aid Society so that people know, because I'm pretty sure I interview a lot of top attorneys, and for sure there's a segment in our community that cannot afford it. So that's where legal aid can come in?
Those are the main clientele of legal aid,
Okay.
those who cannot afford legal representation. But because of the restrictions on funds, they only receive so much funds. They have to specify which areas that they would take clients. And it was mainly housing and economic problems, bill collection, those type of things,
okay.
landlord-tenant issues. They didn't cover everything. Didn't cover criminal law, of course. So I had interned with them for a couple of summers. And so when I was about to graduate, the executive director said, "Hey, you got a job?" I said, "Well, I haven't really looked." He said, "Well, you want to be our managing attorney?" I said, "That sounds pretty impressive."
Wow!
He said, "Yeah, it's on Molokai." I said, "Oh, all right. We can start there."
Okay.
And my salary was $16,000
A year.
a year as a managing attorney.
Now, were you married at the time, supporting a family?
I was married, and my wife was expecting our first child.
Oh.
And she was going to nursing school, and so she was here in Honolulu, and I would fly back and forth every week.
Wow, that's tough.
Yeah, because on Molokai, not much to do.
No.
Off hours. So when I planned that she was about to give birth, we planned that we would want our son to be born in Honolulu. And so I left legal aid after 6 months of time there. Came back to Honolulu. I went to the public defender's office, and he asked me, "You have any trial experience?" I thought, okay, I did one landlord-tenant case. I said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "All right, you're hired."
Wow. That's an amazing story of how you just land things, right?
Yeah.
You're always landing on your feet. Here you are, ready to have a baby with no prospects at all. And
Yeah.
wow.
And so the way I learned trial work and litigation was we went to the old district court building. Now I'm showing my age here. The district court building was located on Bethel Street. Bethel and Merchant. And so we walk into the certain different floors of the courtroom. Each floor was one floor was for DUIs, another floor for the higher criminal cases, all district court level, of course. And the deputy public defenders would meet in the middle of that hallway and see who has time to take which case.
Wow, right on the spot?
Right on the spot. So we trade files.
Right there?
And we talk to the client.
Wow.
And we said, "All right, we're going to go to trial." And that's how you learn. You learn how to, think on your feet.
Right. So that's a very important skill set you need to have.
You needed to. You needed to do it because they deserve representation. And so you couldn't just take it and go, "Oh, we'll just do whatever." No, it was a serious matter.
Now, as public defender, so for the client, you are the court-appointed attorney?
Yeah, under the Constitution, everyone is entitled to legal representation in a criminal case. And if they cannot afford one, that's where the state then provides an attorney for you in a criminal setting.
Okay.
And so legal aid was different. It was a civil proceeding.
Civil, right.
So there is no constitutional right to a lawyer.
Oh,
In a criminal
okay.
case, you have a constitutional right to a lawyer.
Okay, I just learned that as a fact. Wow, that's cool. I bet you there's a lot of people just like me who just learned that today.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And so at the district court level, you gain some experience. And then after circuit court lawyers begin to move on, then district court lawyers get elevated to the circuit court. And circuit court are trial court cases with the public defender's office. And so as I would move up into the next level, you would normally receive the worst cases from the deputies who are up there. And so they'll put a package together of your caseload, and they're normally the losers because they want to get rid of them.
Oh,
so
so
the
you
next
need to
deputy
deal
takes
with
them.
them.
So yeah, my first experience was with these cases that you would never think this person would get off. But I was bringing back to the office acquittals or hung juries or lesser included offenses.
And were they scratching their heads?
The deputies above me, this one person said something really interesting. He said, "Man, how do you do these things? You should be either a used car salesman or a pastor." He said that.
Wow.
And I laughed.
Wow. And what year was this?
This was in, this would have been 1980, 1981.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is your beginning. It's just
my
taking
very
off from the very beginning. So what that kind of tells me is that you have a way of knowing how to work with people. You have this natural ability to, obviously you have to get to know them quickly, what they're all about.
And it's not it's not a sales pitch. What I took away from that comment, I laughed, of course, and I never became a used car salesman, by the way. But what it told me was that I had a way of understanding people. I could understand the client, and that everyone deserves a chance. And it wasn't me really getting them off, but it was understanding the system, the criminal justice system, which is designed around a prosecuting attorney who will present the best case he has. And the defense attorney's role is to make sure that they are doing everything, they meaning the government, is doing everything correctly under the Constitution.
Right.
And if they do their job correctly and all of the defendant's rights are protected and the prosecution wins, then that's the law. That's the system. That's the democracy we live in.
Right.
But if they did not do their jobs correctly, if they did not follow the constitutional mandates and the defendant gets off, it's not where the lawyer did something right. It was where the prosecutor kind of messed up here and there. And so it really is to honor and respect the system, the way that it's designed.
So you, from the very beginnings, was already learning how the judicial system works, right?
Yeah, and honoring and respecting what the law calls due process. Due process protects everyone's rights to have a fair trial, have a fair hearing, that even though they're accused, they are presumed innocent until they're proven guilty. I think today's world, we kind of mixed it up a little bit.
Yeah.
You're already proven guilty. The media and other outlets, if your name ever shows up, and especially with social media today.
Oh yeah.
Your name shows up on the internet or through a Facebook.
Right.
Or
You're considered
guilty.
considered as the trending topic of the day.
Right. Yeah. And people pass judgment and make opinions, when in fact our democracy requires that you need to be proven guilty, not just talked about or gossiped. And so way back then, I understood that about people and the rights that we have.
And then, how long were you doing that?
I was in the public defender's office 81 to about 83, about a couple of years. Yeah.
And then tell us the journey into becoming a judge, because that is, from somebody who wasn't sure what he was going to do, especially in law, and then you just get propelled into this leadership role as a judge. So tell us more about how you got there, what you observed from the bench, and how, mainly I want to get out there how it affects people when they end up in a courtroom, whether they're defending themselves or they're paying consequences. I did my interview with Duke Iona, and he gave his bird's eye view as a judge, and he's seen so many crazy things. So tell us your experience and how that touched you, what you took away from all of that.
From the public defender's office experience, I moved into the private sector and practiced both civil and criminal, just a little bit of criminal, but mainly civil cases. But in the process, I really found it to be interesting how a judge would then sit in the middle
right
of everything. And judges, of course, conduct their cases differently, depending on their personality and their style. As an attorney, you're advocating a certain role, but yet you need to anticipate what the other side may be doing, maybe strategizing, and so you have to see both sides. As a judge, you sit in the middle of both sides, and you help to bring resolution to a problem. And I found it to be very intriguing, and it kind of paralleled different experiences that I've had growing up.
Yeah.
When I was a kid or in high school, when people had problems, they always came to me for some reason. Never knew why.
Wow.
It could be girlfriend problems, and
But they seem to. The thing is, they trusted you.
Right. They came to me and they asked me for my opinion. Can I help them to do this or that? And there were also times when I would see someone in trouble and I would walk over and try to intervene. I remember one night it was like 2 or 3 in the morning. And dogs were barking and you could hear this screaming. This lady screaming.
Oh my gosh, really?
And this guy yelling at her. And at night it's really quiet.
Yeah.
So that just echoes. And I walked out there, and there was a man standing over this woman and ready to beat her.
Oh my gosh.
And so from where I was, I yelled out. I said, "Hey, get off of her." And he looked at me and he said, "Well, you want some of this?" I said, "Hey, get off of her."
How old were you?
Oh, I must have been like maybe 20 years old, 21 years old. I said, "Get off of her." And as I started walking closer, I don't know if it was his family or neighbors that were close to him, were yelling at me, "Hey, brother, let him go, let him go. You don't want to get in trouble."
You're kidding me.
And I said, "No." I said, "You get off of her, otherwise I'm calling,
Right.
911. And he looked at me, and the girl on the ground said, "Oh no, go back home. I don't want you to get in trouble. Leave me alone.
Right.
I'll be okay."
And
this
then,
guy is over her. He's straddling her.
Yeah, and probably she feels that if you help him out, she's gonna pay for it later in some way.
So he got off of her, and he walked away. And so I told her, "Get up and go home." And I started walking back to my house, thinking, okay, if he attacks me from the back or the right, I'm going to flip him this way. Yeah, so I'm already trying to anticipate that.
Yeah.
But my experience growing up has always been where if I see a problem, I step in. And my dad told me later on, "You crazy, don't ever go there by yourself. You always call for backup, or you
Right.
never go into it alone." But that was always me.
Yeah.
People either came to me for help or I always looked for help. And so in my legal career as a lawyer, I watched that. And then I had clients who would say to me, "Hey, you do such a good job at settling cases. You should be a judge one day. Why don't you try and check out whether you can be?" And that's when I started.
That's very telling when you have people telling you that. Yeah.
And so when I entered and I got appointed first to the district court and then to the circuit court, I loved it. I loved sitting in the middle as an independent decision maker, not being swayed by, a client or who's paying you more money or whatever.
Right. Because you have to advocate for them zealously.
Yeah, and
it's a one-sided thing.
And in order to settle cases, you need to earn the respect and trust of both sides. Whether it's plaintiff or defendant, prosecutor or defense.
And Duke Iona brought that case up. He says, no matter who the person was in his courtroom, he had to earn their respect. And I told him, well, as a judge, you could just run them over. Whatever he says goes. He says, no, you earn their respect so that when the decision is made, they will know that it was fair, even if it's not in their favor. That it's a mutual respect between the two of them. And I thought, wow, that's different from what I thought, because I figured, the judge, whatever he says goes, and it doesn't matter. In my case, I lost my case, and so, but I had the trust of the judge, at the same time. Yeah,
and I understood that, and you learned that as well. And I think it came out in part of the testimony I gave in the SB1 same-sex marriage hearing. And again, it was not about so much the contents of the bill, although I do, I have a stand against same-sex marriage. But my opposition was just the process, because it wasn't being honored.
Yes, and I was very moved by that. And you talked about how the process is more important than the results. Can you kind of expound on that?
That's a lesson of life that I've learned. And many times we're so interested in what is the result, what is the decision, in terms of personal growth, because I work with a lot of young leaders. They want to know, what is my purpose in life? What job should I get? And those are all important. You need to reach that decision at some point in your life. But the process that you go through, the lessons that you learn along the way, the process will expose what needs to be shored up, what needs to be given consideration,
what your strengths are.
What the strengths are. In the case of SB1, what the voices of the people were, and some of the concerns. And I remember saying to the panel of House of Representatives, I said, people say it's time to make a decision because we've been going at this for years. And I said, you listen to the testimony. 5,000 people showing up to testify. It means that we're not quite ready yet. There's still some things to disclose. And I said, you got to understand the role of a legislator. You don't have to make a decision. You're not like a judge who has to come to a decision. Or an executive branch governor who has to either sign or veto a bill. As a legislator, you don't have to make the decision if there's still things to be aired out. And it's all part of the process.
And the people are part of that process.
Exactly.
They need to be heard.
Yeah. Because if you respect the process and you allow people's voices to be heard, and you allow time, and you give them a chance to be a part of the process, I think regardless of what the decision is, the ultimate decision is, people will be okay.
Yeah.
Because they were respected.
And that's right along the lines of when you were a judge, you earn the respect, and they understand that they need to respect you as well.
Yeah. And you have to earn that.
Yeah. And you know what? I wanted to go off a little bit here about what is your advice to people who are looking for legal representation as far as a lawyer, attorney, mediator in that arena?
Yeah, trust is a big factor, because that person will pretty much take the lead in your case. He'll be giving you advice. He'll be giving you counsel. There are a lot of things that you don't understand.
A lot, like 100%. When
yeah.
you go, all you know is how you feel you've been injured. That's all you know,
Right.
but you don't know, where you can take it, what your rights are.
Yeah.
I mean, I went through my own 4-year legal battle, and I lost in the end, and it was such a learning process that through the process, I learned so much, and then after the process, I learned so much what the attorney could have done. So it's
Yeah.
really important that you choose somebody who's adequate.
Somebody who's adequate, competent, somebody, to me, the bottom line is somebody you can really trust. And it's the sincerity of that trust. And, I got to admit that we don't have 100% our ratings as lawyers.
I know
doesn't
the
rate
lawyer
very high.
jokes
Yeah.
and everything.
Yeah, but you need to find a working relationship in one that you can trust, because they will have to give you advice, because you don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
It's such a maze.
It is.
The legal process itself. It doesn't have to be that confusing, but it does. The reality is that it is confusing. So you need to have the trust of someone, and if you don't feel that sense of trust with that person, that's not the lawyer for you.
Okay, and that's what has been the advice from all the other people that I've interviewed, from Peter Carlisle to Duke to Jim Hochberg, all of them.
Yeah.
That's the advice. So I want to make that clear because of my own experience. You don't want to have to go through that and learn in hindsight that there's so many things that could have been done for your case. So you really need to take the time, even if you're emotional and you want to get it started right away, you got to step back and really do your due diligence. That's your responsibility, right?
Right.
Okay. And another thing is, if someone finds himself in court, what are your suggestions of conduct? That just came to my mind because I'm pretty sure a lot of people watch the news and all these TV, what do you call that, about being in a courtroom. I was just on my side. People's conduct, does that like if there's a contempt of court, is that the deciding factor, one of the deciding factors of the judge? This is just me. I just wanted to know out of curiosity. As a judge, have you seen?
Yeah. First of all, your conduct in court should be civil.
That's common sense, but there's
yeah.
people out there that are just,
Because I think the media plays it up too much. We have created the fantasies of the courtroom experience in the television.
Right.
And it seems that the public is fascinated with law. Almost every news channel has a legal correspondent.
Right.
They have shows about law. You have Judge Judy's,
exactly,
Judge Joe Brown, and all those guys, and they really hype it up as to what law is all about. When you're in the courtroom, be civil, because in that arena, in that setting, the law, not the judge now, the law. The judge is a part of the law. In other words, the process, the democracy that we live in deserves respect. And so the best thing you can do as a party to a lawsuit in a courtroom setting, be respectful, be civil. I've had an attorney once who just totally disrespectful. And so we had was a jury trial, and there will be what's called bench conferences. So an attorney says, "I object, Your Honor."
Approach the
And
bench.
there's an issue that you don't want the jury to hear because it might prejudice their decision. And rather than take a recess and have to excuse the jury and all the logistical things, some matters can be addressed at the bench. So I said, approach the bench, please. Attorney, both parties came. I listened to his arguments. I said, overruled. He said, what? Really loud. And he started arguing his case. I said, would you please keep it down? Made my decision. Your objection is overruled. Turned around. He went back. And there were other things that happened in the course of the trial. I'd give him other warnings. Walking back to the counsel table, he yelled out, well then, thank you, Your Honor.
Very sarcastic.
Very sarcastically. At that point, I said, we're going to take a recess. We'll excuse the jury. And so they filed out. I said, attorneys, would you remain in the courtroom? And right at that moment, I said, I'm going to hold you in contempt of court.
Wow.
And
so it can be with the attorneys too.
Oh yeah. And we will hold your hearing when this trial is over.
Wow.
Now, I learned this from Chief Justice Moon, that as a judge, as much as you want to just nail this guy, you need to be respectful of both lawyers and parties, because the respect goes both ways. Yeah.
Right.
You need to gain their trust, etc. And so I did it in a very gracious way. Took a recess. We completed the trial, and it was done. I forget what the decision was, but the time period between me holding him in contempt and having the hearing to find him in contempt and sentence him was a period of about a week's time before the trial was over. In that week period of time, when I'm at home and I go walking with my wife, I say to her, so what do I give him? I'm going to nail this guy. I should nail this guy. Because he needs to be taught a lesson.
Right. He's advocating for people and yeah, exactly. If you let him get away, he's going to take it to other courtrooms.
Right. And my wife kept telling me, take the high road. Take the high road. And so I really wrestled with that. And the time came for us to have the hearing. He apologized. So the jury's gone, case is done.
Right.
He apologized, and I found him in contempt. I fined him $50.
Wow.
Contribution to the Hawaii Lawyers Care or something. And we took a recess. Case was done. I walked back to my chambers. my bailiff, my law clerk, came running in. He said, "Man, Judge,
That was what was that?
You should have seen in the courtroom right after you left." I said, "Well, what happened?" He broke down. He just cried.
Wow.
He cried, and then a couple of days later, because he was known to the clerks down at the civil desk. A couple of days later, one of the clerks said to me, "Yeah, I heard that guy was in your courtroom. What did you do to him? He's a different man."
Wow.
So you see what respect can do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I could have nailed him. I could have made it the worst day of his life.
Right.
But I respectfully held him in contempt, and it changed the person.
Wow. This comes to mind is that as parents, as we're rearing our children, they need those boundaries.
Yeah.
And even though they don't like it, instinctively they're grateful for it because it molds them. And it doesn't stop as children. I mean, like for you, for instance, you had the authority, but you didn't abuse it.
Right. And it was a process.
Right. It was a process.
You respect the process. So regardless of what the outcome was, the person feels like they've been treated fairly.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this is something new to me too, because I didn't know you could have a hearing judge to attorney that resulted from a case being heard and they were in contempt.
Yeah.
Wow, this is very fascinating.
Yeah.
That at least we know that the attorneys can't have all authority, because as the individual, I think a lot of us feel the attorney has all this knowledge, authority, and then of course comes the judge and everything. But it's good to know that the attorney needs to be.
They have boundaries too.
Yes, that's good to know.
And everyone needs to respect, again, the law. Yeah. Not the judge as a person. And I look at the lawyers as being a part of the law, the whole process, what's going on within that courtroom.
Right.
And as a judge, you're the one who's responsible for the respect, the decorum, and what happens in that courtroom. That's your courtroom, and you guard that at all costs, because that represents who we are as a society.
Right.
Because if this disrespect for the judge, disrespect for the law, then what happens outside the courtroom? See, then all chaos breaks loose.
Right.
So it's so important that a judge be able to oversee and control and make sure the parties are being treated fairly. So when people walk out of that doorway, whether they're the lawyer, the party to the case, or the jurors,
Right.
or even witnesses who come in, they watch trial proceedings.
Oh yeah.
When everybody leaves that courtroom, they know that justice was done, and we're living in a free society, a free government, and that's been
Right.
protected. Yeah.
Wow, that's good to know. Because the theme of this show is it's not a matter of if, but a lot of times it's a matter of when. We just don't know.
Yeah.
But it's good to know that we have this in place.
Yeah.
And as you seeing it from all the different aspects of it, from the advocate, attorney to the judge, it's good to see that point of view. And so now I wanna just go further. So you've worked with, represented, litigated in behalf of, presided over your fair share of people going in and out of the courtrooms, with many having to face numerous consequences for their actions. You've been in the trenches and know very intimately how our judicial system works. As a judge, you were trained never to rush through a decision. So I think we kind of covered this, but here's my question. From a judge's perspective, expound on your thoughts of situations where people are trying to be heard on both sides of issues, and that we have a system of democracy. So we already kind of covered that, but is there anything else you wanted to expound on that?
People need to understand too, though, as we do have a right to voice our opinions, but we also have to respect that there comes a point in time where a decision needs to be made. And so I am not saying by any means that when we talk about the process and letting people voice their concerns, that nobody makes a decision. Judges,
In the end, there's a decision.
in the end, there will have to be a decision. And whether it's a courtroom setting, if a decision is not made, then people's lives can't move on.
Exactly.
You know, I had a judge, so I was a civil lead judge in the district court level, which meant I had oversight over other judges who were conducting civil cases.
So that's a leadership role among the leaders.
Yes, and to make sure that cases were moving along. If there's any complaints from the public, I had to kind of address that with a judge.
Okay.
There was one case in particular, a judge had not made a decision in a year. And
For a year.
I went to his office because the parties were complaining. They were saying, what do? I can't, you got to make a decision on what's
Right.
happening to my case. And
That's a long
the
time.
judge took it under advisement, and there's no decision. So I went to his office, and he had all of his law books out. And so he's, doing intently trying to research the topic.
Mm-hmm.
And finally I said, this is in the chambers, off the record and all that. I said, brother, you got to make a decision. I said, if you don't make a decision,
People's lives are on hold
they're
for a
on
whole
hold.
year.
Yeah.
I know what that feels like. Mine lasted 4 years.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Yeah. I said, make a decision so they can either decide to appeal or decide to settle or something. But you got to make a decision. And so as much as I am in favor of and I stand for allowing the people's voices to be heard, someone has to make a decision.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, we're gonna segue now, where and usually agents of change and the audience, that I just go through this randomly, but I wanted to make sure I covered everything with Elwin here because you are a natural leader, and with multiple leadership roles, including, after stepping down from the bench as judge, you are now senior pastor of New Hope Metro, and you are overseeing, again, another type of leadership role, an operation of 1,000 volunteers, 70 staff members, and on a weekend service, you'll have 10,000 people coming through these doors. So, what inspires you to be a leader and wanting to be involved in all of these areas? And we kind of touched on that now because we see that naturally people come to you, and you naturally have this inclination to help people. So we kind of covered that. So that being said, with your past in numerous legal and leadership roles, what was the deciding factor for you to run for lieutenant governor, and what do you wish to have accomplished in that role?
Let me go back a little bit.
Okay.
Because when I was a district judge, and then you get elevated to the circuit court level, handling these cases, very important issues. But there was a time when you hear a common thread being said throughout many court proceedings, and that is, Judge, we're here with a problem, fix it. So whether it's a civil case or whether it's a criminal case, Judge, here's the person, he's committed all these crimes, he's guilty, now fix it. Put him in prison, give him counseling, drug rehab, whatever.
Right.
Fix the problem. And I don't know when it was that it came to me, but I thought, man, we're at the tail end of things, trying to fix something that's already been damaged. Family's been damaged. Individual has been damaged. In a civil case, businesses. I had this one civil case where it was two sisters fighting over this restaurant.
Oh.
And they fought, and the attorney's fees were just going down the
Skyrocketing.
drain. Yeah. And you know what settled the case? One sister asking the other one for forgiveness.
And how long was it? How long was it going on
Oh, it's
before
over at least a couple of years.
Wow.
And all it took was forgiveness. And I saw all of that, and I thought to myself, I don't want to wait till I'm on the tail end of the problem to try and fix it. How do I get on the front end of everything? How do I make it so hard for people to enter the courtroom? How do we work with people's lives so we can start resolving these issues before it hits the courtroom?
Right.
And that was one of the decisions that factors that made me decide to leave the bench.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
think when that happened, it probably took a lot of people by surprise. I
Oh,
mean,
took
why
me
would
by
you
surprise.
why would you want to do that?
Why would anybody, leave a promising judicial career? Because one of the senators said to me during my confirmation hearing from district to circuit level, I was 41 years old. He said, "You seem to be climbing this ladder pretty quickly."
Yeah, because 40 is young.
Yeah, how are you an ambitious kind of a guy? And it wasn't because of ambition, but I was climbing that ladder, and for me to step away from all that when I was going up,
Right.
people scratch their heads, and I do too.
I would have.
And to take a role as a pastor, which pays like half the salary of what we were making then, and but my heart was to help. My heart was to get involved on the front end of everything.
And this was you
Yeah.
as a young child.
Yeah. So that stayed with me. So I then became a part of the church called New Hope, and it was growing very rapidly. Being a part of a leadership team where that experience allowed me to really develop the ability to oversee a large organization.
That is large.
People don't understand when they hear the word pastor, they're thinking, this country church, and so what do you do during the week? Even my mom asked me, she said, "You're stepping down from the bench and you're going to be a pastor? They got enough work for you to do?"
Oh my.
Not realizing that I was overseeing the weekend services. Thousands of people come.
Yeah.
And very, very highly managed by volunteers. And so you have a staff of about 70 and then about 1,000 volunteers every weekend. So it trained me in how to organize and oversee and manage large organization. And then I planted or started this new church, New Hope Metro, which again has risen very rapidly. So all that put together has given me this experience, but still I'm thinking I'm going to retire. I don't need to do any more. I've done very well in my legal career. Who else wants to be a judge? I mean, everybody wants to be a judge at some point, I think. Gained a national championship in sports. Started a new church and have my son, coming up
Brandon.
and ready to pass it on to him. And so my career and my life is fulfilled.
Right.
And then SB1 came.
Oh.
And I had been asked to run for political office the day I left the bench.
Oh, really?
Every election cycle, somebody would
Wow.
ask me.
And you left the bench what year?
That was in December 31st, 99.
1999. So it's been a while.
It's
And
been a
so
while.
you've been asked all these years.
Every
all these
election
years.
cycle, yeah. Until finally I saw the injustice that was happening with SB1. Again, I have a position on that, on the content of the bill, but the process that it took. But I'm thankful in a sense that when I look at what happened during the special session, it was like almost a scab. You have a scab.
Festering.
Yeah, you don't
It's kinda
understand.
healing.
Yeah.
It's
On the
covering-
surface,
it's
it looks kind of
covering-
junk.
Yeah,
but,
it's all junky, but it's there for a purpose.
but you kind of let it go, and you think it's going to heal, not knowing that underneath is all infected. And I think what the special session did was it scratched that scab off
And exposed it.
and exposed everything that's underneath. And when I saw what was going on,
You know what? You're right.
Yeah, when I saw what was going on, I thought, gosh. And I think about, so we adopted this child from China about 8 years ago. So he's 11 years old now. And I thought, when we brought that child from China, I wanted him to grow up in a land that I can be proud of, that I can pass on to him. And we're not heading in that direction. Our leaders have lost all the values that we stand for. Some reason, somehow along the way, a public servant has become a public official.
Yes, because, and I discussed this with Charles Dejoux and Duke Iona. Isn't it supposed to be a government by the people, for the people.
Yeah, it's supposed to be all the people.
I mean, aren't they
for
supposed
us.
to be working for us and hearing our voice?
Right, they're public servants.
Yeah.
When I got involved with, the ministry and as a pastor, that's how we're trained. We're trained to serve.
Mm-hmm.
I don't come every weekend. Or I'm not here to be served.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever put me up on a pedestal. I'm here to serve. What's going on in your life? How can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the role of a public servant.
Mm-hmm.
But when we call them public officials, now we got to give them a lay every time they show up somewhere. We got to give them, reserve parking and whatever. And I thought, no, that's not right. And they're disregarding us.
It's our tax dollars that are giving them that life.
Right. I'm paying your salary, And so it was totally, to me, it was so apparent. It really disgusted me to see moms and grandkids and the mo'opunas and everybody sleeping on cement floors
At the Capitol.
at the Capitol during the hearing, waiting for the chance to testify. And when they get a chance to testify, they're completely disregarded, totally disrespected. And that's why my testimony at the hearing was, respect the process.
Mm-hmm.
You're not respecting the process. And so when all of that went down, I thought, okay, I don't need to do this. But I'm not doing this for me. We need our kids to have a better place to live.
Right.
So I'm going to jump in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point that you made, because it says here, I wrote it down. It says the process is important, more important than the results.
Mm-hmm.
When the process is honored, united we stand.
Mm-hmm.
When the process is dishonored, divided we fall.
Yeah, that's right.
And so the decisions decide our destiny and affects our future and our community.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think you're saying that your theme is to return righteousness back to our government.
Yeah, and righteousness is defined as trust, fairness.
And we're going back to the basics.
Yeah, everything that we grew up with, that we learned when we grew up, when we played in the streets, when we ran through the cane fields. Me growing up in Pro City.
I did too.
Yeah.
Waipahu.
Yeah, we trusted each other, and when the cane burned, the black snow
Oh, the
would
black
flow
snow,
off,
yeah, and the plane with the DDT.
Yeah. I mean, we grew up in those days, and I want our kids to have the same opportunity. And so somebody got to step in. I'll do my part. I'm hoping everyone else, registers and votes.
And that's another point. Again, with my interview with Charles Dejoux and Duke Iona, people will need to participate because, we bring the fact that there's all of our armed forces out there sacrificing themselves, some the ultimate sacrifice of dying for us. Also their families. They sacrifice a lot of time away from their spouses as they're out there defending our country. Freedom is not free.
Yeah.
And then we need to exercise that freedom or else that's all in vain.
Yeah, and I never realized, my first time running, so this is all new to me. But these candidates are making a huge sacrifice. Huge sacrifice. It's a lot of work to do. Candidates who are running are passionate about the issues they stand for. And we have several really good candidates who are coming up with fresh, new blood, fresh approach. They're not tied to any political, history, no favors. And so this election season is a really, really good one to finally get involved with. I'm hearing that from many, many people.
Yeah.
That no matter where I go on this island, and we're going to hit the neighbor island soon, but the comments are all the same. I never voted before. I've lived here for 15 years. And this is the first time I'm going to register because I know that we're going to bring change. There's a new freshness that's happening.
That's
so I
good.
hear that a lot. And so it's the year.
That's good.
It's time to jump in, register, vote. You got to vote. Yeah.
And it's been recommended that we do absentee.
Absentee is recommended because there have been issues in the past with polling places not prepared. They don't have enough ballots. It happened the last time.
Right.
You might have car trouble that day, or your husband might not be home from golfing yet. So there are all kinds of interferences. Absentee, you get it in the mail. You have time to really look over the candidates.
It's at your convenience at your home.
Yeah. I pulled up my computer and I'll look at the candidate surveys and where they stand on certain things. So it gives you that opportunity if you're absentee ballot. But for us, like with me, I have a contested primary, and so I really like to help Duke in the best way I can. And we match up in so many different areas.
Right.
But I need to win the primary. And for that to happen, people need to pull a Republican ticket. Otherwise, I don't show up on the Democratic side. I'm running as a Republican, so that vote has to be cast. But people got to vote.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we had the opportunity to get to know you better as a candidate, because people don't just want to vote because it's a name or like, who is this? Well, it's good to know it's good to get to know your candidate, so you know that your vote is really what you want, and not what you see in the media or the little sound bites that you maybe get on the news. It's good to get to know them intimately, and I'm glad we had this opportunity to get to know you better, and what your life has basically been up to this point. And so we can feel confident just by getting to know Elwin better. So now you make the decision, but go out there and vote, because it does count, But I want to take this opportunity to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule, because I know this is a big organization that you have to overlook, and also you're hot in the campaign trail.
Yeah, but thank you. This is a chance, people need to get to know me, and we can always talk about issues and platforms. But unless you know the person and you can trust them, promises don't make any difference at all.
Right.
So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh no, thank you. So we're gonna say thank you, and on the video we always shaka out on the video.
All right.
And in the audio we say aloha ahui ho.
Thank you for listening to the Legal Advice in Paradise podcast. For more information, visit www.legaladviceinparadise.com.